Hello, 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 hello. It is what it is. It is what it is. This is the second broadcast of It Is What It Is, and give you a chance to get out there and get the message to be known about what we're here to talk about. It is what it is. Today we're going to focus on absentee ballot, but we're not going to do that as a totality in this conversation. Shots out trying to get those people to get the opportunity to come onto the platform so we can have a healthy discussion about absentee ballots. There are a lot of myths, there's a lot of misconstrued misinformation being put out there on absentee ballots. And so basically, I want to make sure it's clear that we understand what the absentee ballot is all about and ensure that we get more people to show up to the ballots as far as absentee ballots concerned. Next year's election is going to be a very, very important election. It is for the state of Georgia, is what I call the grab for the state, from the governor to the lieutenant governor, to ag commissioner, to attorney general, insurance commissioner, all those positions, labor commissioner, all these positions will be on the ballot come 2022. And it's very important for us to test the limits as far as absentee ballots is concerned going into next year. We also have a lot of elections coming up locally throughout the state of Georgia. And you have municipalities across the state of Georgia that's going to have elections. And we also want to make sure that those elections have a greater turnout than what we've had in previous years. So I ask you to go out there, tune in, share. Robert, what's going on with you? My dog, he's trying to come out the door so he can try to hear what's going on too. But we want you to share, and have this healthy discussion about the absentee ballot. There's a lot of myths, there's a lot of discussion that we need to be having about this. And so if you get the conversation out there, we understand what we need to be doing when it comes to this absentee ballot, we will have a better sense of pride and understanding when it comes time to turn that piece in. And so once again, I'm gonna stop saying it at the 5-minute mark. Please share. I've shared this on my platform. I've shared this on the other platform. Last week, when we did the show last week, I had it aired on my platform and on the ATR platform as well. And that's Rocky. Say hey, Rocky. That's Rocky, y'all. I had it on my platform. Go to the cage. Go. I had it on my platform. I also had it on the ATR platform. But what I saw was comments and discussion was being done on both platforms. So therefore, what I am doing is we're airing it strictly on the ATR platform because, hey, we said we were going to do this on ATR, all things relevant, and we want to support all things relevant. This conversation, when I come to you, is about national playing into the local agenda here in our local community. My local community is Chatham County, and I care about it near and dear. But what we need to do is we need to see how trends are being expressed and done throughout the national scene and bring it here locally so we can make sure that policy trends change in our community. And I think a lot of issues going on in our community are affecting our community because we have never truly went and became a policy-driven community. What that means is, as a totality for the whole community, creating policy to drive the narrative for our community. We do a lot of rambling and we do a lot of discussions outside our sidebar chair or armchair quarterbacking and all those conversations in private and public sector. But what I'm encouraging us to do is start to bring those conversations, document them, and then after you document them, bring them to our city council, bring them to our county commission, bring it to all those areas that affect us, because that's the way we're going to check and effectuate, make change. And so with that being said, I'm up to 9 people listening to the conversation. I'm going to go into the conversation about absentee ballots. As we know out there in this world, there has been a change when it comes to our electorate throughout the state of Georgia. Georgia voting system was hijacked. Now, mind you, the Republicans put this voting system in play about 12, 14 years ago. And now the Democrats have caught up, and now they're playing the same playbook as the Republican Party. And because of that, we have 2 U.S. senators who are Democrats in the House as far as the Senate is concerned. And what we have to do next is we have to really change and make Georgia blue. The way we do that is we have to make sure we show up to the polls in 2022. And when we talk about showing up to the polls in 2022 and showing up to the polls in 2021, that becomes a discussion. And I think the biggest discussion we should be having right now is the absentee ballots. And so me and my intern that I deal with in my office on my part-time job, we went through the absentee ballot and we saw the fact that there's some misconstrued information out there when it comes to absentee ballot that I wanted to address and discuss today on this platform. And that first thing is the absentee ballot right now. If you have access to a computer, you can fill out that absentee ballot on your computer right now. You can go to the Secretary of State's office, pull and download that application. And when you pull and download that application, it is a fillable application on the web on the Secretary of State's website. Now you fill that out. You fill it out completely. When it gets to the point where it says asking for a driver's license, it is only requiring to present a picture ID on that absentee ballot. It is only asking you to present that picture ID on the absentee ballot if this is the first time you have voted in the state of Georgia. If you have already previously voted in the state of Georgia and you have a Georgia driver's license or a Georgia state ID, on that top line, you can put the Georgia driver's license number. And you have to put your birthday. But you do not, if you are already a registered voter who has already voted in previous races, you do not have to make a copy of your ID. Let's be clear about that. In the past, it was stated that you had to put your ID on there. If you are a registered voter from the state of Georgia and you have voted in previous elections and you have presented an absentee ballot in the past, you do not have to put your ID on there. And so with that being said, if you put your birth date and your driver's license ID number or your state identification number, that is all you have to submit to the Board of Voter Registration. Now, this is in Chatham County. Now, I can't say anything outside of Chatham County, but this is talking to Chatham County. When I talk to them about Chatham County, all we need to make sure is we have the birth date and the state ID number, the Georgia ID number. Now, it says, or underneath the driver's license number, and it says, I do not have a Georgia driver's license or identification card, and I am providing a copy acceptable identification below. And at that point, that's when you put an out-of-state ID or a different ID outside of a Georgia ID or an identification or driver's license number. And so with that, it says, make sure your identification of your ID or document is visible. Take a photo of your full completed application and submit it electronically to your elections office address online. You can send it to Elections Secretary of State, that website. You may also submit a hard copy of your application via U.S. mail or in person to your elections office. If your acceptable form of identification does not fit in this box, please attach a copy and submit it with your application. So it is not as hard as it meant to be. But what I think the problem is going to be now is having people or identifying African Americans in our community who may not have a Georgia driver's license or a Georgia state ID. That may become problematic. And so what we need to do is we need to be right now encouraging our elders, 60 and older, to go out there and get these absentee ballots. We need to make sure they're going out there and getting the driver's license, the IDs, and everything under the sun right now. And I think that this election cycle, and I'm speaking to Chatham County because this election cycle across Chatham County is, guess what? This election cycle across Chatham County, everybody in Chatham County who's a registered voter has an opportunity to vote because guess what's coming up? eSplosh. And I won't talk about eSplosh this week. I will talk about eSplosh next week because I got the list of all the projects that's coming up in the eSplosh, and I want to make sure that we here in our community understand what we're voting for. Now, I don't get paid to do this, so I can talk about eSplosh all day long. But the reason why the Board of Education and those other entities are not putting it out there because they cannot spend money on talking about the Splosh. So that's why you're not hearing a lot of latitude, a lot of language about the Splosh that's going to affect us in our community. So if you really want to learn more about the Splosh, I ask you to tune into next week because that's when we're going to have that discussion about those Splosh projects that will be affected by if we say yes or no, up or down on that Splosh. And I'm going to read the exact language that will be on that platform, that will be on that ballot. So those people who live outside of those 5 municipalities, that have election, you still have an opportunity to show up to the polls, and you still have an opportunity to be able to vote. And so what I'm asking y'all to do, I'm pleading, I'm begging, I'm doing everything I can to ask y'all, please show up to the polls and let's make sure we vote up or down. Like I said, I'm not going to pick or choose or tell you what to vote for, but I will give you the language and the latitude and give you that healthy discussion and give you a platform to have this conversation among ourselves. So with that being said, back to the absentee ballot. The absentee ballot is stupid, simple, easy. When I filled it out, it took me less than 3 minutes to fill it out on my computer. And so my thing is it's a 2-pager if you're going to assist. But if you're not going to assist and you want to fill it out yourself, it's a fillable document that you can go to the Secretary of State website and you can be able to pull that thing down. And what I'll do is in a separate email when I submit and send out the email link for next week's meeting, I'll make sure I put that Secretary of State website on my Facebook page, because it's very, very important that we fill out this absentee ballot, because guess what? Now the other fact that it did change is no longer set for you to be automatically put in the system as an absentee ballot. So every time we have an election, we have to go out there and apply for the absentee ballot. And then my thing is, if the absentee ballot doesn't show up within the 1 to 2 week time period, we need to call the Board of Voter Registration, not Board of Elections, the Board of Voter Registration, to find out why our application hasn't come. And another thing that I want to talk about, the fact that, as you know, I recently moved to Pooler, Georgia. And moving to Pooler, Georgia, I had to change my driver's license. Guess what? It's stupid simple once again. I went to the Department of Driver Safety Service, and guess what? I did everything online, and in 1 week's time, I had a brand new driver's license in my hand. It cost me $0 to transfer my driver's license from one location to the other, because they cannot prevent you from being a registered voter. And another thing, in that whole discussion at the end, when I did my application for my driver's license, it asked if I wanted to change my voter registration address. And I didn't even leave my computer. And in less than 10 minutes, I had a new driver's license 1 week later. And 2 weeks later, in the voter registration system, my address changed from my old address to the new address. Society has gotten a whole lot better when it comes to us being able to be out there and to be able to be tied to the system right and fair. And so my discussion moving forward is, I'm not going to talk about negative. What I'm going to start talking about is positive. And what I mean by that, I'm still going to highlight there's a lot of BS out there. But in my conversation about that BS, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to challenge you, what are you going to do different than the BS we already been dealing with? And so I encourage you to go out there, take the time, share this information. After this is done, it will be on ATR's platform. Take the time, take that 1 hour of your life and go back and look at this message, because this message is helping everybody out there who wants to find out more information about the absentee ballot. And I want to assure you, anybody in the state of Georgia that is a registered voter can apply for the absentee ballot. So that's another false statement that was put out there early on. And so I want it clear. Anybody in the state of Georgia can apply for an absentee ballot, and it only took me 5 minutes to do it. And I encourage you, if you know you don't want to be caught up in that whole conversation or discussion about, I don't want to take 5 hours from work and have to be in that line. If you don't want to be in that discussion of, I don't trust it, or if you don't want to be in that discussion of, I just ain't got time, now is the time to test the limits on the absentee ballot. And what I ask you and I encourage you to do is apply for the absentee ballot and take the time to use the absentee ballot and turn it in. And if you don't want to take the absentee ballot, and let's say on election day you want to vote, just take that absentee ballot when they send it to you with you to the polls, and guess what they'll do? They will cancel that absentee ballot out, and you can go in there and you can vote. And so I assure you, it's so easy for you to be able to do that I can't say it but one more time. Go out there and participate in the absentee ballot so you don't have to go out there and do with anything else. And so, once again, I don't want to show y'all my absentee ballot because it actually has my birth date on it. It has my driver's license day on it. And I don't want nobody to buy a new car and move to Hasty Street over there in Port Wentworth, because I know Hasty Street is a bunch of crap that goes on in Port Wentworth on Hasty Street. They play dominoes. They do all kind of crazy stuff all there in Hasty Street. And so I don't want nobody buying no cars and driving no cars using my driver's license number over in Port Wentworth, Hasty Street. Shout outs to Port Wentworth. That's one of the greatest places we can ever say we live. And with that being said, because I've already taglined and had a discussion about that piece right there, I've already had a discussion about the absentee ballot, and that was the topic that we were going to discuss up front. Now, I want to talk about the BS that goes around the state of Georgia. If you did not know, there are a ton of people on the Democratic ticket. There are a ton of African Americans. Yes, ma'am, I will. The other guy, Barbie brother, must have told you, Margot, to say that. But that other guy, I see his face smirking and everything like that. But y'all go ahead and play dominoes. Y'all keep doing what y'all do. Hey, mama, I see you. They don't see you, but I see you. Thank you, Margot. I want to talk about these municipality races that's going on in Georgia. There are a ton of opportunities that happen for minorities across the whole state of Georgia. What's happening from Atlanta, which we always see, is all good and dandy. You already know that it's a crowded race. Everybody knows that's the national scene with Atlanta because you got 4 million people up there. You got a ton of people that's talking about the politics and how Atlanta really controls what goes on narrative in Georgia. But I am proud of people in Port Wentworth. I am proud of people in Jessup. I am proud of people in Garden City. I am proud of people across the whole state of Georgia that is stepping and moving forward to run for public office. And guess what? When people challenge a system that has been corrupt for decades, for millennials and everything under the sun, people challenge the system. They do everything they can to keep that corruption going. And so I'm going to give a shout out to my brother, Julius Hall, who has been out there adamantly fighting the cycle and fighting the system as far as making sure you change and not being held accountable to his past and trying to give a better future to Port Wentworth. So I'm going to give a shout out to that. Now, mind you, people might say that I'm wrong for that, whatever the case may be, but you know what? I don't give a darn. I ain't say the other word. I don't give a darn because you know what? We need more people that's willing to step up and change the system. We need to stop holding people accountable to their past, and we need to give them an opportunity to give us a better future. And so, and this is, all rise. I got to take my hat off for that comment. The driver, please put that last comment up because I had to take my hat off for that last comment. All rise. All rise. All rise. That right there is one of the proudest females I know in this county. That's District Attorney Shalana Cook Jones in the building. I appreciate you taking the time to spend time with. You have to vote in local elections. Let me go ahead and read that again. You have to vote in local elections for the state of politics to change. And that's absolutely right. Absolutely true. Shalana, we got to make sure we say that to the people in the back of the church. We got to say that for the people in the back of the room. And so, like I said before, those local politics feed into everything. We talk about what Biden did for us as far as all that appropriations and all that funding in these CARES Acts and all these other acts right there. But if we don't have local people in position, and I'm going to say that clear, y'all can have that derogatory conversation on your own. But if we don't have local people in position to make sure when Biden passes that money and it comes down to the state and it comes down to the county and it comes down here to all these municipalities, we don't have people in place to make sure that money gets divvied out, then guess what? We are our own worst enemy. It is time for us to wake up and make sure when we have cities like Port Wentworth that has a majority African-American community and we have leadership up there who don't look like those leaders up there in them positions, then shame on us for not going out to the polls and voting and not coming to the polls and running for those seats. And so that conversation is not just going on in Port Wentworth. That conversation is also going on in Swainsboro. I've had conversations with Swainsboro recently, where Swainsboro is also 60% African-American community. And the mayor has been in that seat. It's a Caucasian male who is tied to the Republican agenda and the Republican Party. And he's been the mayor for going on 20 years. And guess what he's doing? They want to make sure that that money that was appropriated from the top in the federal to get down to these local positions. And because we don't have people in position, guess what? That money is being resent back up the chain of command to the federal government as if to say, we don't need that money. We have to start stepping up. We have to stop voting in the 20, 30, 40 percentile, and we got to start voting in the 60, 70, 80 percentile because that's how you effectuate change. And so with that conversation said, I'm giving shots out to Jessup because Jessup is going to be a new environment. Swainsboro is going to be a new environment. Port Wentworth is going to be a new environment. Garden City is going to be a new environment. All these places, Waycross is going to be a new environment. And Brunswick County, Brunswick, Georgia is going to be a new environment. You know why? Because we're starting to take the time to change the atmosphere in those communities. And it takes us to show up to the polls. And guess what? When we have leaders who don't have the finances, but they speak our heart and our messages, we got to give them $5, $10, $20, $100, even $2,000. We got to make sure that we're doing everything we can. We got to go ahead and do fundraisers. We got to do everything we can to make sure that they have the tools and the finances necessary to make sure they move the narrative forward. So shout out to all those people across the state of Georgia. And I'm only talking about the 1st Congressional District, but if you want me to find other areas, I will. But shout outs to all those people who took the time from their families to run in these political circles, because it's evident and it's important that we have that piece right there. And so I'm seeing all these things right here to go through. But see, and I will say this narrative right here. Garden City and Port Wentworth are two communities in my area. Garden City and Port Wentworth are two communities in my area. Both of them have large majority bases in those communities. They have bases, they have kids, and they have people that want to come in Savannah. But those community structures, because they've been held tight by people who want to control the narrative, have prevented for almost 20, 30 years for Chatham Area Transit to be able to be a facility or transportation site to move from Port Wentworth, Garden City, Pooler, Bloomingdale, and all these little communities outside of Chatham County, to make sure they bring those people into the community. So guess what? It will equal the narrative as far as transportation is concerned. But you know why those systems have not been seen in those communities? Because your elected leaders in those communities have been preventing that language from happening. And so I can no longer allow those communities to have that. And I have to put some of the blame on us for not showing up to the polls. It's evident that we need to show up to the polls in these small places so we can make sure we feed in the big place, so we can make sure we pull some equity into these other communities. It's time out for us not watching the game. It's time for us to get in the game and make sure we control the game so we can make sure that the playing field is equal and fair for everybody across the board. So I done did 24 minutes thus far, and I have not even said the name of the show, but I'm going to say it right now. It is what it is, and it will remain what it is if we are not willing to change the cycle. And so I encourage you, my DA, my favorite DA in the state of Georgia, my favorite DA in the state in the United States of America, heck, my favorite DA one day who's going to be the Attorney General for the state of Georgia. I'm going to call it out. As she has said, we must get out there and vote. And we must make sure we got people like our DA. I give a shout out to our tax commissioner. She has done a phenomenal job. She has changed the narrative. She is moving forward as far as what we need to do in our community. More people's homes have been saved under this current system than ever before. Because you know why? It was a takeover of Savannah, Georgia. And so the previous situations looked away and didn't help people out in majority from losing their houses. Sonia Jackson has done her job as far as making sure we protect people from keeping in those houses. And so between her and Shalana, I'm going to get them on this show so we can have real good, candid conversations, because it's too important for us to have those conversations in our community. But if you understand what I'm going to say, I said it early, I'm going to say it again. I'm going to stay positive, but not only am I going to stay positive, but I'm going to stay on task with policy, because we keep losing because of policy. We got to make sure that our people are putting progressive policy to the table. And that's why we have people like Shalana Cook-Jones and Sonia Jackson. They're at the forefront of bringing positive policy that's progressive for our community. And I know Shalana, I done seen some of her work, and my thing is, I'm not going to take her credit. I'm going to let her come on. Boy, I tell you, she's going to come on here, and she's going to talk about her platform, and she's going to make sure that it is fruitful. And you know, Ramona, I don't even speak unless I know the facts. And sometimes I question people and have the facts just to see how some people come to me and see how they're going to present a different realm of what facts really means. And so shout outs to Shalane Cook Jones. Shalana, all I need you to say is you committed to come on the show, and you can pick a Friday, and you tell me when you want to come on, and you tell me about the platform as far as what's going on, what you got going on in Chatham County. And then we have a healthy discussion to talk about what policy and how we need to take on the Chatham County Commission, the city of Savannah, and those other municipalities under your jurisdiction to make sure that we are doing right by our people. Because it's time out for us being passive and allowing even black folk who elected and in position for us, it's time out for them to get a buddy pass. It's time out to call them out. And so I appreciate it, Madam DA and Sonia Jackson. I appreciate y'all too for stepping to the table. And see, nobody talks about this. Shalana Cook Jones, nobody talks about this. We have more Democratic presence in our community now than we've ever had before. You know why? Because people stepped up to the polls and voted, and not just voted, they showed up and ran for public office. And guess what? All it needed was people to step up and run for public office. And I'm encouraging you, if you don't like the cycle, follow the chain of command. Me and my parents had this discussion this afternoon. My dad said, well, I just called the alderman. And that's cool. If you got a great relationship with the alderman or the people, elected people in position, you call them. And if you call them and things get done, then hey, we good to go. But if you call them and they ain't doing nothing, I'll tell you, I'll be the first one to tell you. Be the first one to tell you. Write them an email. And then write everybody an email. And then my thing is every Friday, send them an email. Once a week, send them an email. Keep being persistent about it. And then when it comes time for them to run for office, guess what's going to happen? You take all those emails and put it on the table and say, these are all the emails I got for you. And hey, man, hey, that's a whole nother discussion for another day, Ramona. All those emails, put them in front of you, and I can't vote for you. But the second piece of that thing is you hold them accountable. But the second piece is if you hold them accountable, part of that accountability is making sure you find a candidate who can beat them and take that seat from them. And a lot of times, what you just said, we got bamboozled. But guess what? It's sad when you get bamboozled every 4 years by the same people. And that's not a failure on that person. That's a failure on the community for not holding that person accountable. So when we come up with the right conversation, we got to make sure that, and it's not documented, it's not been done. It hasn't been done. I agree with you. A paper trail is the best trail we can ever have. And so, Ramona, you already know how I get. I get just like this. Hey, you don't like it? Find somebody to run against that person. And guess what? If we don't find people to run against that person, we can't complain about that person getting that seat over and over and over again. And Ramona, you said it right. There's 3 types of people in this world. The first type of person is a complacent person. They see problems. They don't do nothing about those problems. They don't say nothing about those problems. They walk away from them problems. And guess what? They understand that the problem exists and they don't never challenge the problems. And that's the first kind of person. They quiet and they humble and they just say, man, I ain't got enough money to fight it. I don't want to get in a race. I don't want to get beat up. So therefore, I ain't going to say nothing. And I'm just going to allow them to do just what they did and do just what they run. And guess what? And people don't run. And the second group of people are the people that I hate worse than the first. And the second group of people are the ones who come on Facebook, talk cash trash about the people who are in office, talk cash trash about the system, call cash trash, never puts documentation to the table, never holds anybody's feet to the fire. And then guess what? They go on Facebook and complain. They do all that stuff under the sun. And then guess what? That person still wins because you know what? They never took the time to document. They never took the time to hold them accountable. They never took the time to anything like that. And so guess what? We're going to keep getting bamboozled, led astray, ran amok, and you can say all that under the sun. But the only way we're going to change the system is day one. When somebody gets in office, don't call them ugly. Don't call them stupid. Call them out on the policy they don't put forward. Call them out on the things they don't do. we can say all we want about being bamboozled and all that stuff. I'm reading the comments. We can say all that what we want about that stuff. But if we're not documenting our conversations to those people, then we're just falling prey to everything they do. Not enough constituents are contacting their elected officials about their concerns to take more than one. It takes more than one person to really make a difference. A closed fist gets further than the open sometimes. And the reason why that is true, see, Melinda, I ain't talking from a position where I'm hypothesis. I'm talking from theory. Let me tell you something. In my 4 years as an elected official, I can tell you this, the 3 or 4 times something actually happened was the 3 or 4 times them constituents sent 100, 200 emails to my email address. Because guess what? Those are the 3 or 4 times our elected officials, hey man, I just want to make sure it's understood. What is this about this thing that I got? My constituents are bank. See, when we got those 100 emails about an issue or problem, now mind you, we didn't fix it because that's a whole nother phase, but it was brought to the table. But if we're not emailing to make sure that we're doing what we need to do, then it's Wilson and Dixie. We can talk we can Facebook thug all we want. It ain't getting you nowhere. Now, I told you about 2. I want to make sure you told you about the most important one. And this is about communication. I didn't say that. See, when we talk about communication, we got a group of people that are complacent, meaning they accept everything under the sun. You know, the complacent people another face of the complacent people is this. They come to you and say, hey, man, you're doing a wonderful job in that position. And if you ask him, okay, but he's doing a wonderful job, what kind of job is he doing? I don't know, but he's up there and he's doing a wonderful job. Well, what policy he's putting in play? I don't know, but he's doing a wonderful job. Well, what has he done for you as far as getting your street paved or getting those potholes put up or putting street signs up or street lights? I don't know, but he's doing a wonderful job. That's part of that complacent conversation. And then the other one is the complainer. You know, that joker right there ain't nothing. He ain't nothing. You know, it is. He said he broke his promise. That's complaining. I don't need that. Now, if you complaining and you documenting and you sending that information up to that person and you complaining and you sharing that email, because guess what? People thought I was complaining when I shared an email a couple of months ago and they tried me. They said, well, James, you just saying this. It ain't no truth to this. I said, all right now, I don't want no fuss or fight when I put this email out there. And they kept challenging me and trying me. And you know what? You dang right. I put that email out there to show that what I was saying was the truth. Now, Ramona, you already know how I get down. If before I even put any facts or figures out there, I already understand what the underlying conditions going to be. I just do things just to see who's going to be for me and who's going to be against me. And it's all about shots fired. But guess what? When we talk about, remember I said it's a complacent person and a complaining person. But this is what I need y'all to do. I'm going to count to 5 in my head, and then I'm going to tell you the kind of people I need. I need completers. I'm going to count to 5 again and tell you what I need. I need completers. You know what completers are? Completers are people who get in elected positions and make the narrative change. Completers are get into these neighborhood associations, flip these neighborhood associations so they can hold leaders accountable for their communities. Completers are people who show up to the polls and vote on a consistent basis to show their hand as far as what needs to be done and what needs to be changed in our community. I need more completers because I'm tired of the complacent people and the complaining people because they're not getting the job done. Completing people understand policy and they hold their politicians' feet to the fire to present policy that works out. It's time out for all that other stuff, y'all. We can complain until we blue in the face. We can be complacent until we blue in the face too. But until we show up and show out and be completers, and it shouldn't take somebody dying in our community for us to become completers. It shouldn't be where we need somebody to come out there and do something, a cheerleader. We need a leader. We need people who are not afraid to put boots on the ground, like Margot said. We need people who are not afraid to make sure that when these jokers in these positions, these elected positions, We can call them out all day with blue in the face, but we need to put it in writing when they do wrong. And guess what? We need to stop letting relationships dictate our discussions in our community. And the reason why I say that, we have a lot of relationships. Everybody is kin to everybody. Everybody done went to school with everybody. You know, everybody understands that a black person, I'm going to vote for a person because he's black. We got to cut these relationships. I'm in trouble now because I told y'all that we shouldn't be all voting for all black people just because we're black. All skin folk ain't kin folk. Let me help you out. Some black people have been doing way more worse for us in our community than the white folk who sometimes lead these discussions. And this ain't a race conversation because guess what? If you turn it into a race conversation, I will turn your behind out because this ain't about race. This is about policy. This is about politics. My thing is I care about leaders who are going to move my narrative forward. That's all I care about. And if I got to be the loud one in the room to call that out, then hey, I'll call that out. My mama told me last week in the discussion, I think John McMaster, hopefully he's on the show. John put out there what mayor did a better job or who should be the mayor. And the conversation was Van and Eddie DeLoach. And my mom, you know, I love my mom to death and she loves me. That's why she had this discussion with me. She said, which one was a better mayor, Van or Eddie DeLoach? And the person asked the question. They said, what was the question they asked? What's the difference? That was the question. What's the difference between Van and Eddie DeLoach? And I'm not going to belabor this discussion, y'all. But someone asked that question, and my mom said, my answer, I need to kind of tone my answer down. And my answer last week was, well, one's black and one's white. My conversation behind that, I didn't want to go into full discussion about the true differences because there are a lot of political conversations, and if you want to have that conversation with me one-on-one, I'll give it to you. But my thing is this: neither one of them have truly presented any policy to move the black narrative forward. Now, one has come up with, task force, and the other one brought up the fact that in 2015 they gave us a report saying that only African Americans are getting 3% of the contract work in Savannah, Georgia. And guess what? The problem with us was in 2015, the black community wasn't in an uproar about that. And so guess what? When we have these conversations, and you said it, I didn't. When we have these conversations, my thing, once again, is let's not focus on people. Let's focus on the policy they're not putting forward. And let's call them out on the policy not pulling forward. I don't care what somebody look like. I don't care what kind of suit they wear. I really don't care, on what agenda they have. All I care about is if you're not willing to put forth policy that benefits the skin tone I sit in, I don't have anything to say. And there's nothing wrong with that because a person in Osley Park feels the same way I feel about their community, the way I should feel about my community. But the problem is this: we don't hold folk accountable. I'm going to say that slow. We don't hold folk accountable. And Melinda said it best. We don't just hold them accountable in one person, folk. We hold them accountable in a multitude of folk. And policy, basic civics 101, controls the law and controls the land. And Shalana Cook Jones, she said it best. We got to stop just looking at national politics. Hey, we got to stop looking at just state politics. We got to look at politics in our own backyard. And if we're not looking at the politics locally, we're going to keep being second, third, and fourth citizens in our community. I can tell you right now, there's more letters buying the houses up in Tatumville, Sylvan Terrace, Liberty City, Cloverdale, Carver Village. All those are traditional black communities in our community. And guess what? All those are traditional black communities in our community. Augusta Ave corridor, all those are traditional black communities. And guess what? We had that situation last week where they showed you what they're getting ready to do. They're going to eliminate all these historically black communities. Garden City too. You're absolutely right. And we're talking about Garden City on one side, not Garden City on the other side. But you know what? When are we going to present policy to these individuals? And the other thing is, we got to stop last minute shopping. We should be presenting the plan that we want first. Because guess what? When we got the weeping time, it had already been done. When we got the fairgrounds, it's already done. I'm not telling you not to fight. But what I will tell you is this. I need you to fight, but I need us to be forward and progressive in these other communities that I just named to make sure that we're teaching people how to create a deed. A will kit is nothing. I mean, not a deed. A will kit is nothing to get. We need to be in the communities creating will kits. We need to be in these communities having these people landlock their land up. We need to get some of these renters out of these communities. You know what I'm saying? We need to make sure all that stuff happens. But guess what? It's not going to happen until we become proactive and know. I got my opinions about the fairgrounds. I don't think it needs to be a green space. I think it needs to be a space for the community. I think that Tatumville deserves a space for its own area. I think that Tatumville deserves that. But watch this. Until we get those complacent people to show up and become completers, till we get those complaining people to hush and become completers, we're just whistling Dixie in the wind. And so if we want to fix the problems, and you're not going to see the city leave. Go ahead and put that out. Mr. Producer, put that comment out from Robert. Put that comment out, that last comment from Robert. I don't see how some of our city leaders, him or her, and I can't be 100% with the people. But the thing is, guess what? You can't be mad at these folk if we don't run nobody against these folk. I'm tired of saying that, Robert. We can't get mad at these folk when we don't run nobody against these folk. And when people are running and they don't fulfill the task, we need to replace them. And that's just being honest. Not enough people understand what policy is and how they are written and how they come to benefit us. And I'm not discreet. One thing I'm not going to say, Melinda, is I'm not disagreeing with you. But my thing is, me and you and most of these people who will follow me do understand that stuff. And guess what? We're not going to fix the problem until we start asking people and start listening to people who do know how to understand. Ms. Betty Jones, you know, anytime you need me to come to Feller Park, I'm there. Anytime you need me to come to Feller Park, I'm there. I have no problem coming to anybody, anywhere to educate. Because my thing is, guess what? They don't want me to talk. That's why they're going to stifle and do everything they can. They're going to put all the stuff out there negative about Jay Jones. Because you know what? Jay Jones cares about his community. I'm from this community. This community raised me. This community birthed me. This community is the reason why I am and who I am. And guess what? I don't want to see this community disappear apart. But guess what? If we're not willing to challenge our elected officials and hold their behinds to the carpet, we're going to keep getting what we get. And it is what it is. And the only way we're going to get rid of IDIS is we got to make sure we have people who we vote and put to the table. We got to stop voting because of relationship. We got to stop voting because that's a policy person who can put policy that can help us. But you know what? A lot of us are content with allowing those elected officials to sneak in those seats and pat us on the back and then go through, hey, shouts out to Nikki, shouts out to Maria, shouts out to Sam, shouts out to this person. But then where's the shout outs to the policy? Where's the shout out to what we need to do as far as fixing our community? There is none. And you can't tell me that they're not policy. I read an article the other day. I know we have the bus driver situation going on in Chatham County, and I'm proud of those people stepping forward and doing that. But I saw in a government structure somewhere up north in North Georgia where they're incentivizing their drivers and they're coming up with all kind of relief. So guess what? Why can't we look at these discussions and bring these discussions here to talk to the table what we talk about? I still say folks don't understand the importance of policy, and I can't change your opinion on that, but what are we doing to change the narrative to get them to understand the importance of policy? That should be the question. I'm not disagreeing. I agree that folk don't understand policy. We're in full agreement. But I can tell you this, I talked to Brother Brown today who lives on Montgomery Street, and me and him had a healthy discussion. He owns his property, and he's scared the city's going to come and take his property away from him. But you know what I did? It was by God that I was helping Alderwoman Keisha Gibson Carter, and I got to meet Mr. Brown. In my discussion with Mr. Brown, I told him about making sure he got a will for his property. I told him what we need to do to get his property up to code and bring his property up to all these standards. So guess what? That conversation is this. Melinda, when I asked him, I said, well, why don't you communicate with your alderwoman and this, that, and the third? He didn't know who his alderman woman was. So explaining to me and telling me people don't understand the importance of policy, I get it. Everybody don't play weight into policy. Everybody don't play weight into politics. But the key thing is we have to be those people who are fiscally responsible, who do understand these things. Guess what? It's an obligation that we need to stand on our feet and make sure we go door to door knocking to teach people how important it is to deal with local policy and local politics. Because you know why they don't, and I'm going to tell you, Melinda, you know the reason why they don't like getting in local politics? Because what local politics does is it breaks relationships. And what that means is if Jim Bob and Joanne are running against each other, and Jim Bob and Joanne have different kind of relationships in the community, we traditionally follow whichever relationship is closer to our heart. We don't always look at how policy plays. Now, if you go to the communities like Ozzie Park, and I keep bringing Ozzie Park because I think Ozzie Park is one of the best communities in the city of Savannah. You know why? Because they lock in their money. They lock in their money, and they make sure they control what neighbors can move into their neighborhood. You know how they do that? They price us out. They say, okay, well, we can't redline you. We can't gerrymander you. But what we can do is we can price you out. And we'll price you out to the point where you don't have the economics to be able to buy in this community. Because we have better schools. We have better municipality control. We have better situations going on. I had the same conversation. I'm going to put it out there. It is what it is. I'm going to put it out there. I had another conversation with Mr. Brown. And I'm not using real names. I'm just using code names. But I had another conversation with Mr. Brown. And I asked, and I saw Mr. Brown behind Mr. Brown's house. He had telephone poles and Georgia Power electric lines right behind his house. And the trees had overgrown around those things. And so I asked him, Mr. Brown, when was the last time Georgia Power came out here and cut? Man, I can't remember the last time it came. But then I go to the community where my child goes to, and I know for a fact twice a year, Georgia Power comes in that community and they cut those trees back. This is all politics, y'all. It's all politics. And guess what? I can tell you for a fact, I know, because you know why? They go and complain to Georgia Power and say, hey, we know you're a monopoly, but you need to cut these darn trees down in Ozzie Park. That's what they do. They go to the 311 and all the 411s and all those Savannah lines and all those county lines, and they report the issues in their community. But you know what we do? We call a friend of a friend of a friend, and because we got a relationship with that person, we don't hold that person accountable, who is our elected official. Now, I mean, it is what it is. And if you want to fix these problems, the only way you're going to fix them is you got to put the letters out there and hold them accountable and write this information out there and put pen to paper. That's how you change it. I'm going to say it again. We got tons of people who are complacent. We got tons of people in complacent. It is what it is. But we got tons of people who are complacent. And the majority of people are complacent because they're scared to challenge relationships. The second group of people are the people who complain. You know, every now and then them complainers do get something done. But guess what? They get something done, traditionally speaking, when it comes time for election time. They're not getting it done because it's time to get it done. But guess what? They're getting it done because, you know what? They complaining. And some complainers have greater conversation than other complainers. That's just the way it is. And then the third person is a completer. They ain't got time to do this complaining. They ain't got time to be complacent. They don't give a dang about that relationship because you know what? Bottom line, if you don't fix your elected officials, you don't fix the value of your property. And when you own property, all you care about is the value to go up. We have to get out this myth. I'm afraid to pay taxes because my property value went up. When your property value goes up, that means your wealth goes up. And guess what? It's going to cost you a little bit more because your taxes are going to go up. And there's nothing wrong with that. We have to make sure that we understand we create more value in our property We got to check our neighbors. We got to check our neighborhood associations. We got to make sure that we clear cut and all together. What we did, and I'll say it straight up, what we did over there by the fairgrounds, I ain't never done it over in Owsley Park. You know why? Because you know what? When I see people walking and see people driving through their area and drop a piece of trash, guess what? A person will come out their house, come pick that piece of trash up and put it in the trash can. You didn't hear them complain. They took care of the issue. You don't think litter goes into these other communities? The difference is they understand the value of their communities. And understanding the value of their communities, they don't allow trash, litter, or even rental properties be in their communities. Now, I can tell you, Fairground got a lot of rental properties. So if it's got a lot of rental properties, you are already in control in Tatumville, y'all. Because guess what? At any time, those rental properties can put you out and sell that property to the highest bidder. So if you really want to control your narrative, you really want to control your community, control your community. Control what comes in your community. Control those things and aspects that build up your community. Because you know what? It's two people. I'm going to say it again because I don't think it is what it is, y'all. It is what it is. It is what it is. Two people. You got complacent people in the black community and you got complaining people in the black community. And we don't have enough completers in the black community. Shots out. I know you, Melinda, you're doing a dang good job doing completers. And my thing is, if your neighborhood associations aren't doing the job, those are elected positions too. Change those people. How you change those people? I've seen it where neighborhoods have 600 houses and show up to a neighborhood association meeting and it's 4 people in that neighborhood association meeting. And I say, well, why you don't have more people in the neighborhood association meeting? Oh, because you know, so-and-so got mad at so-and-so brother last month, and because of that, he don't come to the events no more. And all these long-term conversations about why we're not building economic wealth. Let me tell you something. Them folk in Owsley Park complain just like them folk in Cloverdale complain, just like them folk in Carver Village complain, Sylvan Terrace, Tatumville, Liberty City, all these other black communities. Them folk complain just like we complain. But the difference is they keep their complaints and they keep everything in their community. And guess what? When their elected officials or their neighborhood association people are not doing the job, they change them people out quick. They can't change the people out quick. And I understand that some situations you have illegal maneuverability coming on. But guess what? You're not putting your voice, you're not straining, you're not complaining enough. Because you accept it. And I've heard situations where outsiders come into communities, take over and say, this is going to be your leadership. Now deal with it. If you're not willing to challenge it and change it, you're going to be stuck in that hole. Let me tell you something right now. There will be, by 2030, there will be more minorities. There will be more people of non-white descent in the United States of America come 2030. There's nothing they can do to stop it. There's nothing they can do to stop it. If that's being said and that conversation is being heard, what I'm encouraging you in these last 5 minutes is to change the narrative in our community. If you want to stop crime, we got to stop depending on the city and the county from creating neighborhood centers. And guess what we got to do? We got to get together and find pieces of property and make the city donate that property and make this and make the city allow us to control that entity in our community. And when we get that entity and control that entity, we got to make sure it's for the people and not for personal interests. And when we start thinking like that, that's thinking global. That's taking care of our kids. But if we're going to continue to deal with the cities and municipalities and controlling entities that we pay taxes to and we give them the keys to the car and control, then you expect to keep getting what you already been getting. And I agree with you. Yes, they need to attend neighborhood association meetings. I say it, I preach it, and everything under the sun. Like I said, we need to find more ways of making sure people show up to those platforms. Because I can tell you right now, to all those communities I call out, Robert Bryant, me and you talked about this the other day. Let me tell you something. Robert Bryant, I'm going to use you as an example because I can call you and apologize, but I'm going to use you as an example, Robert Bryant. You are the leader of a group of people. Now, if you got 5, 10 people show up, they'll smile and do everything under the same. But if you got 50, 100, 200, 500 people showing up, guess what? They going to come in a suit and tie shirt with a pen and paper, and they going to follow whatever marching orders you give me. I put $100 on that right now. If you give me that kind of platform, 100 people, they will start cleaning up the communities. I told my parents this right now, and I'm not going to disclose it, but I lived in the community at one point in time, and I knew all the elected officials. And I knew them well enough to say, I would call them and say, hey, there's a tree down in so-and-so's yard. It needs to be taken care of because that's on city property. In 15 minutes, somebody was there cutting up that tree and putting that tree into the back of the truck, and that tree disappeared. There was a political signs in the area, and those political signs were in the right of way. And guess what? I called another elected official, and guess what? Within 2 hours, all those signs disappeared and would change. The narrative changed. No signs disappeared. You know why? Because guess what? That person was scared, or those two people were scared that I would go and do an email and send an email to them and call them behinds out. And they were scared that I would run against them. I tell you right now, Dr. Harris will tell you this right here. Me and her talk about this right now. I say this all the time. Find me people to run against these people, and I'll get these people out of office. I ain't got no problem helping getting people out of office, but you got to find me the people who are willing to challenge the system. And so I'm going to close out. I'm at the 57-minute mark. I've saw all the questions. I think I've answered all the questions. These are the discussions we want to have on this podcast. If you tell me you got a guest, I already got a commitment from our DA down here in Savannah, Georgia, and I'm just going to sit back. When she come on the show, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to listen because she has done some profound work in that DA's office. And it's time for us to put some of that conversation out in the community. And so guess what? I told Julius Hall I was going to take an 8-month sabbatical, and I was just going to chill back and spend some time with the family before I really got into these discussions. But guess what? My 8 months is up. It is now September. And you know what? I did the first one last week, Friday. The second one is tonight. And we're up to 21 people. I need y'all to share, because it's time out for being a complacent person, a complaining person. And it's time for us to become completers for our community. It is what it is, and it will continue to be if we're not trying to be the key that changes the message in our community. And so with that being said, I want y'all, when I post this stuff on my Facebook page and y'all want to talk about subjects, post them things up there and give me some subjects to talk about. We're going to talk about the DA's office, but we're going to talk about some other things tied to that DA's office next week. So, because I'm going to have a healthy conversation. I'm going to go out to the jail and see what's going on with Sheriff Welcher. And I'm going to come to the DA's office and talk to them and see what we got going on in the DA's office. And guess what? Call them out. I done told them, Dr. Harris, call them out. We're going to make sure that we're moving in the right direction. And so with that being said, I'm going to close out. I need us to step up to the gate and become completers. Time out for being complacent and time out for being the complainer. Because the only thing we can do is change our society, but it takes all of us to work together. Peace.